All right, we are live. Welcome in. Yet another edition here of the Patriots Beat podcast, live on the CLNS Media Network. I am Mike Kadlick, joined as always by 98.5 The Sports Hub's Alex Barth. Um, Me and Alex sort of did a similar show here last night on the Patriots postgame show for CLNS, but so we're just going to do this sort of again and kind of hit some of the same points that we hit last night for our exclusive Patriots Beat audience. I definitely have to revise and rehash some of my takes, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, after taking 24 hours, letting the Zappy fever come down a little bit. You know, great game overall. Obviously, we'll get into it. Patriots beat the Lions 29-0 yesterday. So we'll rehash that on the offensive defense. Then at the end, we'll get into a quick Boston Sports Minute, talk a little bit about the Boston Bruins, who will start their season this week. But first, before we get into the offensive defense, we're going to hit on some Patriots news that came in today. So starting with the running back room that had some highs and lows yesterday, obviously with Stevenson's monster game, but then kind of got hit with Damian Harris's injury. Bill Belichick told the media this morning in his Zoom presence that running back Ty Montgomery will not return to practice this week. Montgomery, if you remember, was hurt in the preseason in their final preseason game against the Raiders. Looked to be settling into a major role here in the Patriots running back room. He ended up coming back, played week one, and then was put back on IR with a similar injury. So he will not return this week. And Damian Harris left Sunday's game with a hamstring injury. So the Patriots have some work to do in the running back room. They currently have three active running backs in Damian Harris, Rhamondre Stevenson, and rookie Pierre Strong. And they have two on their practice squad in J.J. Taylor, who's been here for a while, and then another rookie in Kevin Harris. So, Alex, thoughts on how they bolster this room coming in?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty thin there. And the most important thing to have, in the running back position in terms of roster construction is depth. And I know there's people who are going to sit here and say, you want them to add a running back? What, you don't believe in Rhamondre Stevenson after what he did yesterday? It's not that. It's the opposite. And it's something we talked about Monday. I want to make sure that they don't run Rhamondre Stevenson into the ground too early in the season. So I put up a list this afternoon on 98.5thesportshub.com of running backs I think would make sense. I mean, you go right to the practice squad, right? I think J.J. Taylor's a guy, if Rhamondre is going to miss time here, or even not, if they just want to kind of limit his workload, if Harris is going to miss time here, or even if not, if they just want to limit Rhamondre's workload after last week, I think J.J. Taylor's a guy who you could see get a call, maybe Kevin Harris, although he did have some ball security issues there at the end of the preseason. They've had a couple running backs in for workouts the last couple of weeks. Nate McCrary's a guy who's still a free agent, who's been with the Ravens that they could break in. Maybe they look to other teams' practice squads. Divine Ogzigbo, who's a guy who was here on the practice squad for most of last season, was let go in the spring. He is currently on Denver's practice squad. They could look to bring him back. So I do think adding another running back in some way, shape, or form is important just to manage the workload at this point. It's just kind of a matter of, there's what kind of back do they want to add? How much commitment do they want to put to the addition? Do they want to add a guy to the 53? Do they want to add a guy from the practice squad? Do they want to elevate a guy from the practice squad? But I do think adding a body at running back here is kind of big for them at this point.
Definitely. They need to add a body in there. Like you said, too, there's two different types of backs that they can add internally anyway. They have like Strong and J.J. Taylor are more scat back burner type players, where Kevin Harris is more of a bigger body, run downhill type of guy which is more similar to Rhamondre and Damian Harris's style of football. So I'll be interested to see how they do that. Exterior things, maybe not. I will do this, and it's obviously not in play here, but the Carolina Panthers fired head coach Matt Rhule today. Matt Rhule finished his tenure in Carolina with an 11-27 record through only 3 seasons. He was signed to a 7-year contract by David Tepper and the Panthers. He has 4 years left. He's going to be owed north of $40 million in his buyout. Are there guys in that Carolina roster? We know that they had a joint practice here in the fall, or in the summer rather. The reason I said it's hot take police over here is because a guy like Christian McCaffrey could potentially be on the block for them. They have a lot of young talent who I don't think they should necessarily trade. Guys like Jeremy Chin, Brian Burns, but anything you can kind of see that any guys in the Carolina organization that could potentially become Patriots down the road here.
I mean, I certainly think there's some. McCaffrey The Patriots aren't necessarily in a spot to trade for McCaffrey right now.
Right.
I also don't know if they would, just because I think they think he's a good player, but Bill Belichick's whole thing, availability is the best ability. He never plays, right? He never, like Christian McCaffrey's going to get, wherever he goes, you're getting him for 2 or 3 games, and he's going to get hurt. So I don't think, I see people in the chat saying Brian Burns, Derek Brown, like I get it.
They're not going to trade those guys.
DJ Moore, they're not going to move those guys.
Yeah.
It's more, can they get mid-round picks for guys who are either older fringe roster players? So I do wonder if they would move a guy like Chuba Hubbard or Donta Foreman, who I think the Patriots would have some more interest in as more of a rotational running back. You trade like a conditional 6th, 7th round pick, a pick swap there. I think that's something they could consider. Steven Sullivan, the Patriots could use some tight end depth. Steven Sullivan would kind of make sense as a 3rd tight end. Looking on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know if they trade Marquand McCall. He's an undrafted player. He's a defensive tackle. I just loved him for the Patriots in the draft. Going a little further, Frankie Louvu's a guy I think is a rotational linebacker that would be a fit. In the secondary, Keith Taylor, a slot corner, kind of boosts the depth there. So, I hate to bum everybody out. The Patriots aren't trading for Brian Burns. I don't think the Panthers are trading Brian Burns.
No. They have too many young guys over there.
Right. The one big name player they might, the one big name player they might actually trade is McCaffrey, and it just, for a number of reasons, doesn't make sense for the Patriots. But it's something to keep an eye on because, like you said, the Panthers were here for joint practices. It was a dysfunctional week, clearly. But
a couple fights
the Patriots. Oh, Kenny Robinson is still on the Panthers practice squad. Should they trade for Kenny Robinson?
Hey, Sparks going.
They have a history of going for guys that they've seen up close in joint practices before. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Also, just, with the Matt Rhule stuff too, the Patriots have their 3rd round pick next year. So if they're going to go into a full-on tank, and did they place Baker on IR? I know it was reported today.
He wasn't IR yet, but
time.
Expected to miss a few weeks. Yeah, high ankle sprain, similar to Mac Jones' injury.
That 3rd round pick, the Patriots traded, was it the 98th pick, I think, for that? I'm looking right now. That was the pick. The Patriots traded out. The Panthers took Matt Corral, smooth. They could have taken Bailey Zappi. They took Matt Corral.
Yep.
And the Patriots got a 3rd and a 6th from them. It was the 94th pick. The Panthers finished with a bottom 5 record. That becomes a top 70 pick.
Yeah.
So looking good right there.
Something to keep an eye on. Another thing to keep an eye on, Matt Rhule is going to be paid for the next 4 years by the Carolina Panthers. Something like $800,000 a month. Something absurd.
Must be
Bill Belichick, it must be nice. Yeah, we don't exactly get that here in these airwaves. But is Matt Rhule a guy that they could bring in to help with their offensive scheme? I know we'll talk about it when we get into the offense. The offensive coaching staff here was subject to plenty of criticism the last several weeks as they've changed things around their backup quarterbacks. They've looked a lot better. They've looked a lot more competent. As much as Matt Rhule was not a good NFL head coach, he was a really good college head coach, and he's also a really good offensive mind and play caller. So do you see that potentially being an avenue for, Matt Rhule to get another job here in New England?
I think Patriots would be interested. Bill, when they were here for joint practice, Bill talked about how he has a lot of respect for what Rhule's done. And maybe, I just think Matt Rhule at heart is a college coach. And you kind of saw it in the way the Panthers operated when they were here. I mean, he's still a college coach.
Yeah.
You've got some high profile openings, right? Wisconsin, Nebraska. I mean, and then who knows what's going to come after that, right? Colorado's another one, but could Oklahoma move on from Brent Venables after 1 year? If it's a guy like Matt Rhule, who has a tremendous history of turning programs around, he's going to get an absolute bag from a Power 5 school, from a blue blood Power 5 school. So coming to New England doesn't really do much for him. I don't know that it would help him that much in the college level, right? He's kind of established already at that level. And does he want to come back to the NFL, or does he want to go to college where he knows he can succeed? I think he might want to go back to college. That's kind of been the trend here. It used to be if you could get to the NFL, you get to the NFL, but we've seen coaches in the last 5 or 6 years, and the way these coaching contracts have exploded in college, and the job security and the way the buyouts work, college to some coaches is a better opportunity. I mean, you look at Jimbo Fisher, right? So Matt Rhule's buyout was what, $40 million? You said about $40 million.
Yes.
Jimbo Fisher's buyout right now is $98 million.
It's
And
insane.
that's going to decrease over the length of his contract. And he's got 7 years left, but he's going to get every dime of that.
Right.
So I don't like, would the Patriots have the door open for Matt Rhule if he wanted to come here? I could
Even
see
throughout
it.
the
I
end of
could
the
totally
season.
see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could believe that, but I think he's going to be back at a Power 5 program next year. Again, the two I like are Nebraska and Wisconsin. There was one other; those were first and third in the odds. I'm trying to remember what was second, and I can't off the top of my head. But I think he's going back to college.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I agree ultimately that the other opening is Auburn.
Auburn was that's not officially open yet, is it?
No, but
It's going to be. But
yeah, it's going.
I could
to
see.
be, so.
I could totally see him at Auburn.
That would be
I
another
could
good place for him.
Totally see him at Auburn.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you that ultimately he is a college coach. He's better in those ranks. Turned around Temple, turned around Baylor, but just a thought, kind of someone who the Patriots have struggled to put together a fully competent offensive coaching staff here for this season. So just I don't know, ideas / thoughts on bringing in Matt Rhule, but Matt Rhule done after 3 years, less than 3 years in Carolina. The last news item to get to for the Patriots today was just 2 roster moves. Quarterback Garrett Gilbert and tight end Matt Sokol both reverted back to the practice squad, so they will not remain on the 53-man roster, at least for now. They can be elevated again, but I think this is a good sign for the health of both Mac Jones and Jonnu Smith. These quarterbacks... Go ahead.
They automatically revert. That's the whole way the elevation works. They don't stay up.
Right, but couldn't they, in theory, have kept them around, and that would be like
they would have had to add them. You have to re-elevate guys each week. Right. They would have had to re-add them to the active roster. No, it's fun. You know what? It's not to pick on you. It's funny when I see that transaction every week because it's the most like the guys automatically revert. That's the whole point of the elevation instead of the addition of the roster, right? They go back on Monday. So I don't know if they couldn't have kept them up and been like, hey, we're going to elevate these guys again next week. The elevations come in on Saturday. So you can't essentially just add them to the 53 without adding them. You have to re-elevate them every week.
Well, then I guess in theory you learn something new every week in this industry. But regardless, Gilbert and Sokol back down to the practice squad. Regardless, going into the offense here now.
No, let me just say, I love the idea that you put it in the rundown because that's what this show's supposed to be: is no transactions too small. That one might, and I said that
it might literally be too small. I did say that
too. That might be the one exception. Is guys getting elevated is definitely worth talking about. Who they elevate. Right. You know, we don't do a show on Saturdays, but kind of reacting to it on Tuesday.
Right.
And we can talk about the elevation of Sokol. I do think there's something interesting there, but that might be the one exception to the rule that no transactions too small. The guys going back, that just is a default. That's nobody who gets elevated doesn't revert. I guess in theory they could get released before they revert, but as far as I know, that's never happened.
Well, anyway, adding to the news list was that transaction because we are relatively going to do a similar show to what we did last week. So trying to beef up the agenda here anyway. Gilbert and Sokol back down to the practice squad. Getting into the offense, the Patriots, like we said, won yesterday's game by a score of 29-0. Beat the 1-3, now 1-4 Lions. The offense specifically put up 22 points. The defense put up 7 of their own. 5 field goals from Nick Folk, only 1 offensive touchdown. So there's some room to improve there in the red area. But one other note that I kind of went through again this morning, kind of going through what happened in yesterday's game. I had said it in the past in this show, and they've been really good in their scripted drives at the beginning of the game and the beginning of the half. The first half, their first drive was 6 plays. It was only 26 yards, but they scored points in their first drive yet again. And coming out of the half, they went 9 plays, 56 yards, and again put it through the uprights. Tough to not see them get in the end zone more than once yesterday, but I thought scripted drives looked really well, and I just thought that they were a lot more consistent on offense, and they continue to get more consistent on offense week by week.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a little concerning that they can't finish drives, right? That Lions defense not only is it the worst defense in the league, they were missing half their secondary as the game went on there. They had, 3, 4, 5 corners and safeties leave that game with injuries. So it was nice to see them get some rhythm, but again, I think it was still a very controlled game plan in terms of, not
Yeah.
opening it up too much, not exposing the offense too much risk. And granted, that's all it needed to be. At the end of the day, you're just trying to go in and win the game. So that's not a knock, but it was still a pretty controlled game plan. They're still struggling in the red zone. So the offensive line played their best game of the year. And if the Lions defense does have one strength, it's the defensive line. So I think that was encouraging to see. But again, you'd like to see him finish in the red zone. And now they got to gear up because the Browns defense is, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, obviously, if he plays Myles Garrett. So I see people talking in the chat, oh, the Lions suck. We'll get into kind of the qualifiers on this game. I don't think it's fair to do for the Patriots defense. I don't think it's fair to attach qualifiers to what we saw. It is fair for the offense, I think, to kind of temper it a little bit.
I agree, but it's also, I don't necessarily think so when you are bringing in your third string quarterback, a guy who does not have a lot of experience in this game, to come in. Yes, it's the worst NFL defense, but it's an NFL defense compared to what he was playing with in college a year ago.
I guess I think it's all relative. Again, you can be impressed with what Zappe did. And again, essentially no turnovers. That one's on Agholor, right? So essentially didn't turn the ball over. He's hitting the open guys between the numbers, which you want to see. He didn't look panicked. He didn't look overwhelmed. That's great. I think he totally checked the box of he's an NFL quarterback, right? And that's a lot more than you can say for some rookie quarterbacks we've seen the last couple of years. Look at what Kenny Pickett's done the last couple of weeks. I mean, he's struggled, right? Kenny Pickett is not having fun right now. But so again, that's all great with Bailey Zappe. And at the very least, I think you have a legitimate backup for the next 3 years. Unless they trade him, which I think some people misread my comments about that yesterday.
Yeah.
I was more so talking about the narratives than the actual situation.
Sure.
But, the people saying, well, he's won the job, all of that. No, it's still Mac Jones' team. We're at least one, probably 2-3 weeks away before we start, people bringing up Brady Bledsoe. We're 2-3 weeks away at a bare minimum from even starting to have that conversation. So that's where I say you kind of got to temper the expectations, but you can be happy with what he did. Again, I do think he proved he belongs.
You can be
and
Zappe.
That's a lot. You can be Zappe, yes.
You have to use the puns, Alex.
He proved, well, no, a lot of people are using the puns. Where I work, it's more about the fever. Do you have the fever, right?
Yeah.
You have the Bailey Zappe. I might have Bailey Zappe fever. I have a different fever we'll get into in a little bit. I think I might have a variant of Zappe fever. But
oh boy.
You can be happy with what he did, but it's 5 bridges too far to start talking about this as a quarterback competition. That doesn't mean people won't do it. They're going to.
Right.
But realistically, context and all of that, what does he do against Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward next week? Then it's a couple more weak defenses, so we'll see. But, can he keep this going? If he has 3, 4, 5 more games like this, then we can really talk about it.
Yeah, but even we talked about it last night, but the narratives that circulate, they enter the locker room, right? And so a guy like Mac Jones is hearing all this today, whether it's this show specifically or your airwaves at 98.5 or, the commotion and the talk around the quarterback controversy that is made up is real and it gets inside the room. So Mac's going to want to play immediately. He's also been getting healthier and healthier week by week, according to Bill Belichick. So realistically, I think the most likely scenario here is that Mac plays next week and we never see Bailey Zappe start a football game for the Patriots again, barring another injury, obviously. But, I mean, he played well, right? 17-21,
right?
188 yards, a touchdown, the turnover, which was not his fault. Without the turnover that bounced off Agholor's hands yet again, he has another completion, goes over 200 yards, no turnovers, protects the ball, QBR spikes even higher. So, he did a great job. He did a really good job for what they asked him to do. Another thing we talked about, and I want to get into more with some numbers here, is just that they made the offense so much easier for Zappe than they did for Mac earlier in the season. Zappe, they ran play action 37.5% of the time yesterday for Zappe. Throughout the first 3 games for Mac, they only ran play action 10.8% of the plays. So, they're making it easier for him to make reads. They're just making the offense easier and even more streamlined for a guy like him to have success. Something we saw last year from Mac, and they tried to expand the offense a little bit, I guess, this year with Mac, and it didn't work well. And I think that whoever is in the game next week in Cleveland, whether it be Mac, whether it be Zappe, they need to stick with the same offensive scheme they've been running.
Yeah, I mean, they got to blow it up a little more. They got to kind of, add some more deep stuff. Just Tyquan Thornton
Right.
running a go with
Yeah,
all
of
short
course.
routes is not really a deep call, right? I want to see them. They were basically their deep shots to this point with Zappy have been, we're going to give you 3 or 4 short, maybe intermediate routes, and then you'll have Devontae Parker, Tyquan Thornton, or Nelson Agholor running a go on the sideline. And if it's there, it's there, right? That's where you got those 2 PIs this week. They got to start, whether it is Zappy, whether it is Mac. I do want to see them start scheming up some of that, scheming up some deeper shots.
Yeah, sure.
And
Agreed.
when that comes in and continuing with the play action. But I do think what they've been doing the last couple of weeks as a base is better than what they were doing the first 2 weeks as a base. I hated the no play action. Obviously, the zone run stuff wasn't really great. Get under center, power run the football, hit play action off of that, whether it's Bailey, whether it's Mac. That's what I want to see, but then just use it to stretch the field a bit more. Really, the last 2 years, stretch the field more with it than you have the last 2 years. I think that's ultimately what you want to see it look like. And that's sort of close to what the Brady offense was. Now, it's still a massively watered down version of it, but there's plenty of room between what they're doing now and what Brady's offense was. They can continue to add more without making it way too overly complicated.
Agreed. The offensive line.
Let me just say, putting them in Brady's offense does not mean they'll perform like Tom Brady. Obviously, I shouldn't have to add that qualifier, but Tom Brady's offense does not mean Tom Brady will be your quarterback.
He's the next coming, Bailey Zappi.
That's
He's coming in for an injured quarterback, Alex. Come on.
I saw somebody tweet Bailey Zappi's a more athletic Tom Brady, which, just take a second and think about what that statement is.
Yeah.
Right? That would be the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yes.
Because you're taking the greatest quarterback of all time and you're giving him the ability
and giving him some speed.
Look, he's just Tom Brady mixed with Michael Vick. It's no big deal, right?
Yeah,
it
that's
is
what we have here.
Ho hum.
Belichick brings in these guys all the time. They just don't get their shots. But again, in this offense that we're talking about here, this easier offense, if you will, for these guys, right? Even the offensive line seems to be playing. Sure, less complex. The offensive line seems to be playing better in it too. Cole Strange has been a monster again. Yesterday he had 26 pass blocking snaps, no pressures, no sacks let up. Isaiah Wynn with a penalty, but he looked better. Trent Brown looked better. It's like they want to play more. Maybe it's easier for them. I'm not sure, but they look great. They were opening holes for Rhamondre Stevenson. He comes in with 25 carries, 161 yards, averaging 6.4 yards per carry. Yesterday I said that Stevenson needs to be the bell cow of this offense. I want to take that back a little bit because looking into as a bell cow, you need to spell these guys in this game. My point here is that there was a sense around here for the last 2 seasons that Damian Harris is the starter and Stevenson is the backup / spell guy. I think that should change after yesterday. I think Rhamondre needs to be your starter and Harris needs to be your spell guy. Harris, the reps need to be staggered, and it has to be Stevenson getting more. He's a more patient runner. His field vision's outstanding. The way he waits and goes into these open holes, it's like it's different than what Harris does. He's better than Harris. And no knock on Harris because Harris comes in, he runs hard, he plays well. I'm not taking anything away from Damian Harris. I just think Rhamondre Stevenson's better. He showed his balance too on that long 49-yard run. He looked like a beast yesterday, and I think that he needs to. We'll see where Harris's health comes in, over this next week or two, but I think Stevenson has to be your guy that's getting the majority of the reps at running back.
I'll say what I said yesterday. I still think it should be a relatively even split, no more than 60-40. I think you got to keep the guys fresh. If anything, I think you add a third back to the rotation to keep them all fresh. It's about the impact level of each carry, right? And I think you should balance them, but when it's 3rd and 1, when it's 4th and 1, when you're on the goal line, when you're trying to run the clock out late in the game in a close game, if the Patriots get to that point, those should all be Stevenson. Those should 100% all be Stevenson.
Sure.
But I still don't know about giving him more than like a 60% carry share, especially this early in the season, because, I compared it to Judon last night, and I'll say it again. Let's say week 18, right, against Miami is a perfect example. That could be a win and in game for both teams. Sure. You got to run the clock out, but you don't have Rhamondre Stevenson because he's still dealing with the nagging injury because you had to give him, 29 carries against the New York Jets in mid-October. That's going to hurt. that's going to suck. So I just think you have to have the big picture in mind.
But this game you talk about in mid-October against the New York Jets, is it a close game? Is it a game that, in theory, right?
It should not take Rhamondre Stevenson 29 carries for the Patriots to beat the Jets. It should, if it takes Rhamondre Stevenson running the ball that many times to beat that team, they're not going anywhere anyway. It doesn't matter, right?
More so, my point there more so is that if that's what you need to win the game is the 29 carries, you need to win the game, and you need to worry about winning games now, and you can't worry about potentially trying to win a game.
So then you don't think the Patriots are a very good team?
No,
is essentially what you're saying.
No, I'm just comparing the running back room.
No, you're saying they're not good enough. You're saying they're not good enough for
the Jets are 3-2
to beat
what you say.
They played like nobody. You're saying that Skylar Thompson really lit it up. You're saying that they're only as good as Rhamondre Stevenson running the ball 29 times to beat the Jets.
No. There's something to say about the term any given Sunday, and if that's what you have to do on that Sunday against the Jets.
Okay. Look, if the game develops that way,
yes,
the game develops that way, but not every game is going to develop that way.
No.
You can't go into every game saying we're going to get Rhamondre's got to give us 30 quality carries today for us to win this thing. Yes, it might pop up at times. It's exactly what happened on Sunday, right? You needed him to do it, and he did it. That's great.
And he did it.
But you don't want him doing that every week. You don't want to have to count on him doing that every week. Yes, there may be spots where that has to happen, certainly, but you don't want to make it a central point of your game plan because you're going to run him into the ground, is basically my point.
Point taken. Understood. I just love Stevenson. Love watching him play. I think he's better than Harris. He needs to, again, take these. He has to take the important snaps over Harris, is what we can agree on here. He's the better back. He also needs to be healthy to take them. So, point taken from you.
Again, it's that catch-22, right?
Of course,
you want him out there as much as possible, but the only way to get him out there is as much as possible is to keep him healthy, and the only way to keep him healthy is to limit his snaps. So it's all about finding that balance. I don't think 30 carries a game, 25, 30 carries a game is that balance. I think it's probably closer to 20.
Sure. A guy on offense yesterday who returned to action was wide receiver Jakobi Meyers. Meyers came in, grabbed 7 balls for 111 yards on 8 targets, 1 touchdown that were hard for him to come by. The throw from Zappe in the cover 2 hole was a really nice play. He stepped up in the pocket, made his read, delivered the ball on a dime into the end zone. I thought that was one of Zappe's better throws of the day. But Meyers, a guy who seemingly was missing some time, Patriots maybe not wanting to pay this guy, a guy who's in a contract year, he's the 5th highest graded wide receiver this season according to Pro Football Focus, behind only Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown. It's tough because Jakobi hasn't played all the snaps, so it's a little bit skewed, but when he's out there, he plays quality football. Your thoughts on the day Meyers had yesterday overall? Seemed like a really good security blanket for Zappe in the slot.
Again, first off, he looks much faster in red. We need to establish that. Right. Yeah, I thought he had a good game. Again, when it's not Mike Hughes across from him, is it going to look different? Right. I do like that they're stretching his route tree now a little more vertically, and I see people in the chat talking about paying him, right? If you're going to pay him, you need to expand his route tree to add. I'm not saying you have to only run him vertically, but you're just adding it to the toolbox, right? Because, and you saw it, there was 1 3rd down where they ran him up the seam a couple of times, and then he ran like a up out where like he really sold hard that he was going, and about 5 yards he kind of came back in and just dusted the corner.
Yeah,
that route doesn't necessarily work if you're never going to run him on a go, right? They're going to sit on that. So I like seeing his route tree expand a little bit yesterday. Again, it's tough to put stock into, he's getting all this separation because Mike Hughes isn't good, but he did what he asked him to do. I mean, he looked no knocks for a guy who didn't play for 2 weeks. No knocks. He looked great. I'm interested if his route tree continues to expand, and I'm interested to see what he looks like next week. He'll probably draw Greg Newsome in coverage. That's going to be a big matchup. That's going to be a heavyweight matchup. So that'll be fun to see.
It will be for sure. I also just a couple notes on the rest of the wide receiver room. Devontae Parker did not have a target, and Kendrick Bourne had one catch.
Did not officially have a target. He drew those 2 DPIs. Right.
Yes, correct. Did not officially have a target. Drew some DPIs, but wasn't much of a factor outside of that. And then Kendrick Bourne had 1 catch for 1 yard. This is getting into a little bit of the drama, I suppose, Alex, and I know you hate this kind of
Did
stuff.
you see the
but
video he posted though? Bourne is great.
Yeah, about the group project.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Kendrick Bourne posted something on Instagram today, basically saying that when you get an A on the group project and did nothing involved in the project, something along those lines, because like I just said, he only had 1 catch for 1 yard. Patriots win 29-0. So funny stuff from Bourne on Instagram, but also a clip going around of him and Belichick getting into it a little bit on the sideline. It was on a play where he was called for a penalty because he covered up the tight end, and it's a penalty for ineligibility reasons. Anything to make about Bourne and Belichick is that maybe is his willingness to argue with Belichick any sort of reason you think on him potentially being in the doghouse here?
Well, here's the thing. That happened, and then he played the second most snaps of any receiver on the team.
Right.
So I think that was just a heat of the moment thing. I do.
Yeah.
I think he was trying to explain himself. I don't think he liked the call. I don't think that. Look, it didn't throw him back in the doghouse, right? He kept playing. If anybody's in the doghouse, it's Nelson Agholor. And I know they said he got hurt.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
I'm
not with you on that. I don't buy that 100% either. Yeah.
I'm not like, if he didn't play again after that, yeah, it's a huge thing. Then it looks like he got benched for arguing with Belichick.
Fair.
He didn't play,
he still got his reps.
57% doesn't seem like a ton, but that's probably about where he should be. I've been saying this. He should be at about a 60% usage rate. It's a season high. I don't think we'll see what he does next week. Look, maybe it's a delayed thing and Bill doesn't play him next week, but for right now, he's still got his playing time. All in on it. And I'll say this about the wide receivers too, Mike, and this is something I've talked about since the summer.
Mm-hmm.
The way they use the wide receivers on Sunday is how they should use the wide receivers for the rest of the year. None of these guys need to be playing 100%. The strength of the wide receiver room isn't the top of the depth chart. It's the depth. It's 1 to 6 in the fact that they all have different skill sets. Mix and match the combinations, give the defense different looks, keep them off guard, which you saw that yesterday against Detroit on Jakobi Meyers' touchdown. They brought Devontae Parker back on the field. He hadn't been on the field. The corner, and I forget the name, but the corner that had been assigned to Meyers switched over to Parker when he came on for, I think it was Thornton, right? And that's obviously a very different matchup.
Right.
New corner on Jakobi, and he got kind of lost on that touchdown. So the usage rates, and they can vary a little bit based on matchup. I'm not saying you stick to anything, but Jakobi at 80%, Bourne was at 57%. Devontae Parker came in at 52%. Tyquan Thornton was at 42%. LJ Humphrey was at 23%. Nelson Agholor was at 12%. Like, that's probably a pretty good balance. And maybe some weeks, some guys play more, others. If you're going to take somebody out because 6 is a lot, it probably is Agholor at this point.
Please be Agholor.
3 bad. I know he has the big numbers, but he's got 3 bad turnovers this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about the value of all the skill sets being different, right? The closest overlap is Thornton and Agholor, right? So, but between those 5 guys, I know I'm the rotation guy, right? I sound like a broken record. We just did this with the running backs, and I'm going to talk about it later with the corners.
Yep.
The way their roster is built, the way for this team to be the most effective is to play as many players as they can and keep everybody fresh and try to just out stamina teams late. It's something that the Patriots have done in the past. They did it with higher level talent in the past, but they've done it in the past and it's worked. They really haven't done it as much the last couple of years, and maybe they didn't have the depth for it.
Right.
They do now. So I love what they did with the wide receivers on Sunday. I hope that trend continues.
Agreed. And I also, again, I said it, I went on a little bit of a tangent last night, a little bit of a rant here, but I'm so beyond done with Nelson Agholor in this receiver room. So I hope that it's more Thornton, less Agholor now that he's back off IR, because again, a guy who you bring in and you pay a ton of money, he no-shows, okay, it's a bust of a contract. You win some, you lose some, I guess. Not every contract's going to hit, right? Last year, no-show, okay. But this year, 3 games, he's making plays that are like actively costing your offense. That's stuff that can't happen, and that you like literally have to take him off the field and be like, look, we can't have this. You need to redeem yourself somehow, some way to get yourself back on the field. He hasn't really done that thus far. He's making more mistakes, more stuff we've seen from him in Philly. You guys know the meme with the guy, the dropping babies like Agholor. Like, again, it's stuff that you can't have especially in a game where your third string quarterback is out there just trying to survive. He hits him in the numbers and he pops up an interception. Can't have it from Agholor. So that's my one gripe about this offense yesterday.
Yeah.
I think that I have tried to mix these LinkedIn things into some stuff with guys losing jobs. So I probably should have done this with Matt Rhule, and because he'll be on the job search soon. However, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. So that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's getting towards the end of 2022, so what better way to finish the year strong than with the right team member? LinkedIn Jobs makes it super easy to post your jobs. You do so, and then you add the job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile picture to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easier to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. And it's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/beat. That's linkedin.com/beat to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, we just did the offense. We will now get into the defense. Patriots defense. Alex, you wrote about it. We talked about it last night, but let's do it again because the Patriots defense was phenomenal yesterday. The league's leading offense coming into the game in the Detroit Lions. They were averaging 35 points per game in their first 4. Patriots shut them out yesterday. They went 0 for 6 on 4th down. It was a dominant showing. Initial thoughts off the top for you before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, and the Lions had almost everybody, right? They didn't have DeAndre Swift, but
Yep.
The running game is as much about the offensive line as it is about the back. That the offensive line was fully healthy. Amon-Ra St. Brown played, TJ Hawkinson played, and they still held them. And they shut him out. So not again, I talked about all the qualifiers on offense earlier. Not a ton of qualifiers here. They played well. Period. Plain and simple. Oh, it's Jared Goff. Well, Jared Goff put up 35 points a game to that point. It's the second time in the last 25 years, and believe it or not, I don't have the first one in front of me. I know I usually do. This was per ESPN. Second time in the last 25 years, a team came in scoring 35 points per game or more and was shut out. This late in the season. It's not like a team scores 35 in week 1 and gets shut out in week 2, right? This late in the season, just the second time that's happened. So legitimate performance. I think this defense is for real. I think they're for real. I think it's worth getting excited about. They still got a couple things on the edges they need to iron out, right? They're not going to shut out everybody, but they got some players on that side of the ball, man.
Yeah, they do. And it starts up front with Matt Judon and not dominant front. He had 3 tackles, 2 sacks, season high 4 quarterback pressures, the forced fumble that led to the 59-yard fumble return touchdown from Kyle Duggar. Matthew Judon is the best player on this defense, and he showed it last year. He fizzled a little bit down the stretch, but he looks all as dominant as he did at the beginning of last year. So, I mean, Judon's that guy for them on the front, and he needs to keep this up if they want to keep, putting teams in the ground like this.
Yeah, and it goes back to kind of that sustainability thing. And he said after the game that he's trying to, condition himself better and be ready for that run. But he's been making it all go up front. He's been excellent.
Yeah, and good on him too, I guess, for kind of being able to admit something like that, right? A guy who
totally, yeah,
like straight up did not perform down the stretch the way he should have, and it may have cost him some games or at least definitely some drives throughout the end of the season last year. So a guy who admittedly lost, like you said, some conditioning down the stretch last year and is working to improve that, and he looks great so far. So hope to see that continue on. You have some stuff to go in on about the cornerback room. So we'll start it off with Jack Jones, the rookie. He had a second career interception yesterday versus the Lions, an awesome play, reading Jared Goff's eyes and coming over and grabbing the ball essentially out of TJ Hawkinson's hands. He's awesome. I think he has the perfect cornerback attitude. He's a ball hawk. I guess I've said it for better or for worse. Obviously, he's a rookie. We haven't seen too many missed opportunities or misplays from him so far. They're sure to come when you play football like that, but he's looked really good so far. He's the highest graded cornerback in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus. I keep bringing these PFF numbers in here, but I mean, when you're ahead of in a conversation guys like Travarius Ward, Pat Surtain, Jalen Ramsey, and Stephon Gilmore, you're playing at their level. That's really good to see through the first 5 games of the year. Again, The caveat is same with Meyers in the numbers is that he hasn't played the snaps, but he's been active for 5 games, so he technically qualifies. But when he's out there, he's playing good football.
Yeah, no, he really is, and I kind of talked about this yesterday, and then Bill actually talked about it this morning. That interception is such a high level play mentally because they're running a concept and they scored on it last week where TJ Hawkinson's lined up in line. He's going to run a wheel up the sideline, and then they run a go out of the slot.
Yep.
And essentially what that does, like with a lot of offensive game planning, and the Patriots were masterful at this in the Brady era.
Yep.
You find young players or players you think you could just take advantage of, and you put them what's called in conflict. You basically give them a play where they have two options, and they have to, in a split second, make the right read. And what that play does, when you run two guys parallel on the same side of the ball, if they're at the same level, right? They're both 5, 10, 15, 20 yards down the field at about the same time. The over the top defender, it's not super difficult because you're going to have time to get to both. Now, when one guy's 20 yards down the field and the other guy's 13 yards down the field, suddenly you're in conflict because how deep do you play, right?
Yep.
You don't want to play too deep that you can't get to the guy that's 13 down the field, but you don't want to play too shallow that the other guy gets behind you. So on that interception, it's the wheel route up the sideline and then the go in the slot. So I believe it was Tom Kennedy is the slot receiver, and that's Jack Jones' coverage assignment. Jack Jones is following him up the seam. Hawkinson's a little bit behind him in terms of the depth coming up the sideline. Jack Jones recognizes where the throw's going, comes off his assignment, covers a good amount of ground, and now all of a sudden it's athleticism, right? Goes up, gets the ball. The fact he got his feet in, given how high he jumped, where he jumped, might have been sneaky the most impressive part of that play. But, you go back to the play last week against Green Bay, and not to minimize it, but he ran the route better than the receiver. He picked the ball off. Like, that's what corners do. This was on another level. This was really on another level. And it's so to go. I said before, I don't have Zappy fever. I have a variant. I have Jack Jones fever. Seeing that, and he's still rounding his game out. The thing about really aggressive corners is a lot of it's instinct, and your instincts are only as good as what you know, right? So the more football he sees, the more he plays, he's going to learn the different ways that quarterbacks and receivers are going to try to attack him, and he just kind of files it away, and it just adds to that catalog. It's sort of like with Tom Brady, all the answers to the test thing, right? So for Jack Jones, like there was the play later in the game, it's a 3rd and 13. He gives up a 20-yard completion to Khalif Raymond because Khalif Raymond gave him a little head nod and he bit on the go, and Raymond comes back and makes the catch, right? So he's still got to iron that out, and that's still sort of where I think they don't overly expose him. Played 61% of the snaps yesterday. I think that's probably about the number, 60 to 70. But when you see him make a play like he did on that interception, to know that he has that in his bag, JC Jackson made his bread and butter on plays like that. Like that's really encouraging to see, because it's like, okay, he can do this once he kind of figures out how to sort through some of the misdirection stuff he's going to see, and he can do that on a more regular basis. It's going to get really exciting.
Totally agree. Like you say, you have the fever. I do as well. I'm waiting on some odds to come out to take a look.
Are we talking defensive player of the year?
Not player of the year, rookie of the year.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Defense,
not winning.
I'm gonna see where he sits after a week like this. 2 weeks in a row. I don't believe he leads the NFL in interceptions, but he's certainly up there. He's making plays as a rookie. I think right now, I'm taking a look. Guys like Devin Lloyd and Aiden Hutchinson, Trayvon Walker, your typical guys, are at the top of the list. George Karlaftis has been really good for Kansas City so far, but I don't know if Jack Jones keeps making flash plays on this. He could make a run at Defensive Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. Again, I'm going to take a look at the odds and kind of go more in depth on that on CLNS Media later on this week, so you'll be able to check that out. But in saying that, you had mentioned about the wide receiver and running back rooms as far as kind of, pulling back reps, rotational piece, rotational guys. So if he doesn't get the reps in the room, he's not going to be able to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. How do you see the reps kind of moving forward with the emergence of Jack Jones? Where do you kind of see that go?
Yeah, so again, I think that they do want to kind of limit exposing him a little bit. I think in those key situations, they're going to lean on veterans, Jalen Mills, Jonathan Jones. He's steadily played he played 99% against Green Bay, but they didn't have Jalen Mills. He was inactive. So that's almost an outlier. You almost kind of have to throw that out for the purpose of this discussion. I'm not saying you have to throw out the performance. The performance was excellent, but
right.
I think, it's steadily gone up every couple of weeks. He's at 61% this week, which is a high outside of that game, that Green Bay game. I think you probably still see it increase 4 to 5% for the next couple of weeks. And I think he probably maxes out for this season somewhere between 65 and 75%. And then next year we can talk about him as maybe an 85, 90% guy. But
sure,
I still think they're going to lean, assuming everybody stays healthy, I still think they lean on Jalen Mills and Jonathan Jones in the big spots, and they use him as a change of pace guy. Because again, there are still going to be those moments where he's going to look like a rookie. You saw one against Detroit, and they don't want to necessarily have those in big spots.
Agreed. But again, like you say, you have the fever. I had it since last week. It's the second he picked off Aaron Rodgers going into the end zone, I was like, this is fun to see. I mean, a guy who's plays as aggressive as he is, he has that kind of cornerback one type attitude that you saw from guys like Revis and Ramsey, just kind of, obviously Richard Sherman, a guy that talks, a guy that has fun with it. I think it's awesome to see. So
you got to have that mentality to play that
exactly
level.
Exactly. And it's, Gilmore, it would come out in spurts, but he was generally a more laid back kind of low tone guy. Seeing this from Jack Jones is just, I think it's so fun because a guy like Jalen Ramsey who was like that all the time, a guy like Sherman who was like that all the time. It's just, you hate him when you play against him and you love it when he's on your team. So good stuff to see from Jack Jones. We'll continue to look forward to that throughout the rest of the season. One last spot, we talked about it last night, but I figure we'll touch on it again for the strict Patriots beat guys who tune in. The safety room. The safety room was awesome yesterday. The safety room is a room that Bill Belichick himself called the best room on this football team. It's a room that was injured a little bit at the beginning of the year with guys like Kyle Duggar. But they showed out yesterday. Duggar was awesome in coverage. He had the 59-yard fumble return touchdown. McCourty was great as your quarterback guy out there, if you will, quarterback of the defense. So he was awesome. Adrian Phillips was awesome. I mean, the safety room, like I said, a room that was supposed to be good to start the year. Slow start, brought it all yesterday. I thought they looked awesome.
Yeah, that's the best they've looked. Like you said, Duggar taking away Hawkinson. I think that conversation about, are the Patriots struggling with tight ends? Yeah, when your top tight end stopper's hurt, you're going to struggle covering tight ends. I don't, I think a lot of the questions we had about the talent on the defensive side of the ball were more due to absences due to injury than actual lack of talent, right? You see Duggar come back, what that does for the safety room. Jalen Mills coming back, what that does for the corners. Even, Mac Wilson and Raekwon McMillan both made big plays yesterday as linebackers. Those are guys who've been up. I'd even add Devon Godshot to that list. He didn't miss any time, but he was on the injury report for a couple weeks with a back injury, and he was removed this week. And then he makes, one of the biggest plays of the game, that early stop on fourth down, right? He was right there. So I think getting healthy is the best thing that could have happened to this defense. I know some people are talking about personnel moves. Deion Jones' name was getting brought up a lot, right? Guys like that. I think the best thing that could have happened to the Patriots defense was getting healthy, and it looks like they're finally, relatively healthy.
Yeah, definitely. On all three levels too. So we talked about the key to the game sort of being stop the run, make Jared Goff beat you. And that's exactly what they did yesterday. Any final thoughts on the defense before we kick it towards the end of this thing here? Just, overarching, more in depth, whatever you kind of want to get off your chest here before we start to wrap.
It was really interesting. They actually went to a little 4-3 yesterday.
Yeah.
When the Lions were really, having some success running the ball. You don't see them do it that often.
No.
I like the personnel they did it with. It was Barmore, Godshaw, Wise, and they threw Sam Roberts on the other end.
Yeah, I did see his snaps go up. Yeah.
The first time he's gotten real defensive playing time. And I don't know that that's an every week package, but against a team that runs like the Lions do, it makes some sense to mix it in. And the Browns run the ball a ton as well. So
yeah, maybe see it again next week.
Interesting set. I wonder if that comes back. And actually the other one would be touching on the safeties. And I know we've got some big Miles Bryant fans in the chat here. The way that early in the game on early downs, they actually went with the 2-corner 3 safety look, and they were rotating Kyle Duggar and Adrian Phillips as the slot corner.
Yeah.
And then they'd go to Miles Bryant on third down. Marcus Jones actually finally got some run in this game later in the game, playing in the slot, and he made a play. But that 3 safety look with the safety playing the nickel, didn't hate that. And
No,
that
I agree.
might be a matchup thing again. You want to be bigger, and we saw it pay off almost instantly. The play where Kyle Duggar early in that game fights through the 2 blocks to blow up the screen.
Yep.
Miles Bryant, Marcus Jones, those 2 guys are not making that play. So I don't, can you run it every week? I probably not, but
depends on personnel on the other side too, obviously.
It's kind of cool to know that they have that one in their back pocket, because I thought that they haven't done a ton of that. They've done some 3 safety stuff, but it's mostly been 6 defensive backs. I was trying to think of, 3 safety, 5 defensive back looks they've run. Can't think of a ton of them. So cool little wrinkle. Cool little wrinkle there for the defense. I like seeing that.
Yeah, it's good to see them like adjust on the fly, if you will. I mean, I won't get into Belichick's ego here and kind of things like that, but like to see them adjust on the fly, switch up the entire base defense into a 4-3, bring in a guy like Sam Roberts. It's good to see. It's good to see that, like you said, it's good to see it. It's in their bag of tricks.
Oh, there is another thing we need to bring up. What a good game. Shout out to Court in the chat. Jahlani Tavai had a good game. Not a for him good game. Not he had a couple good moments. He played well. And it's a couple games now he's played well. So there you go.
Agreed. And you don't have to say you two, because as much as we both said that we weren't fans of Tavai during camp, we both did say he probably shouldn't make the team. Alex at least read Belichick for what he was telling us, was that Tavai is going to make this team. Myself, newer to the industry, not learning what Belichick says is gospel here in New England, I thought that it was just maybe some posturing. I don't know what I thought, but Tavai made the team, and he's been damn good the last 2 weeks. So kudos to Jahlani Tavai, who has been, again, a really good integral piece of this defense, who is making plays week in and week out at this point. Good to see for him.
Yeah.
I believe that's that on the defense. My only last point here is that from the defense, this is the strength of this team, and the defense will be the reason they do or don't compete for a wild card spot in the AFC. The AFC is a lot weaker than we thought it was going to be. The AFC West specifically is a lot weaker than we thought it was going to be. The North is beating each other up. The East is... The AFC East has a bunch of good records, but again, we talked about the Jets.
The AFC East is basically the Big Ten West, where Nebraska's in first place.
Yeah. So again, if the Patriots come through this stretch here and grab a couple wins, they're going to compete for a wild card spot through the end of the season, so long as this defense continues to play the way that they're playing. So again, Patriots win 29-0.
And Nick Folk continues to hit kicks. Let's not leave Nick Folk out of this. He was awesome.
Right. We touched on that last night, but we'll give him his due on this show as well, because he hit 5 field goals. Nick Folk is probably the second best kicker in the league right now, behind Justin Tucker, and
he has been for the last couple of years.
Yeah. It sounds kind of crazy to say, but if you look at the numbers, it's right there in front of you.
It's funny when when they sign him, and I remember I actually wrote this because remember his first couple games he was erratic, and the Patriots coaching staff said they were standing behind him, and I wrote something about it, and people were like, "Well, what's the point? He can't hit from 50 or beyond, so like, why do they want him?" And the fact that once you get inside like the 35-yard line, you're getting points. Right. I don't think people understand that that's not normal. Like, we've had a great run of kickers here in New England, right? Maybe I'm in the minority on this. I'd rather the guy that hits from 50 and in 99% of the time, but can't hit from beyond 50 than the guy who's like, 75% from 50 plus and like, 80, 85% from 50 in. Give me the guy who's consistent above all else at that position. If we're talking leg, we can talk about punters. Punter, I'd rather have the power and the accuracy. Accuracy to me is like 75, 80% of the kicker evaluation, and you're seeing it with Nick Folk right now.
Agreed. And it's like, that's what the Ravens have in Tucker too, right? I don't know if you saw the end of last night's game, but they have an offense where at the end of games, so long as you get to like essentially the 35, 40-yard line, you're going to win the game if you're going to be able to, Tucker's going to put it in. And that's sort of what we have with Folk in a little bit closer range, I guess.
Right.
So I don't know. Again, Nick Folk, we'll give, like I said, give him his kudos here on this show because he was awesome yesterday. So Patriots win 29-0. Before we wrap this thing up, we're going to bring back another segment that I have yet to do on here, I don't believe. See if the backer gets on there. We're going to go into some Boston Sports Minute because we have the Bruins. The Boston Bruins start on Wednesday. They take on the Capitals from Washington, I believe, at 7 p.m. puck drop. The Bruins have had an interesting offseason, to say the least. Sort of feels like a last dance vibe around the team right now.
I mean, it's been that way for the last 3 years.
I know, but I don't know. You fire Bruce Cassidy, you bring in Jim Montgomery. David Krejci comes back on a 1-year deal. Bergeron comes back on a 1-year deal. Really feels like the final one last dance. You're not going to have Tuukka Rask between the pipes. It's still going to be, Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark. But thoughts on the Bruins coming into this year? It feels really like this is do or die for them. If they don't do it here, it might be full rebuild going forward.
So here's what I think of, like, the best thing you can do in hockey, the best thing that can happen for a team in hockey is to get hot right before the playoffs, right? And they're going to get key players back later in the season. Patrice Bergeron, Charlie McAvoy. So they're in good shape to do that. Yes. I think he's only going to miss like a month.
Okay.
Maybe
still,
I don't know. But
but he won't have to play a full season is the point.
They're in a really interesting spot where the roster is naturally built for them to almost organically improve as the year goes on, which, I mean, that's any sports team. That's not just hockey. I shouldn't say that. Any team. Bill talks about this all the time with the Patriots. You want to progressively get better as season goes on. The Bruins are almost built for that, the way they're going to get these guys back. I'm not saying it's on purpose, but the problem is, you got to survive the beginning of the year. And they've got a brutal stretch. I think it's games 3 through 12 where they got a West Coast trip where they got Colorado. They've got Calgary. A couple other games. I believe they have Tampa Bay in there. I believe they have Toronto in there. You can't let it be over before it begins. That's the biggest thing with me. They're going to have to figure out a way to steal some games early if kind of the JV team can keep them afloat until they get McAvoy and Bergeron back. Then they might be cooking with gas. Then they might really have something. I know Ty Anderson from 98.5 has picked them to win the division.
Okay.
I do think there are some teams in the division that have taken a step back, which is part of Ty's analysis.
Certainly. Yes.
But they need, I almost don't want to say they need a strong start because they're not going to have a strong start. They don't have their full roster. But if they can steal a couple of games early, like a couple of big games against good teams early, they're going to be in good shape. And they do, as somebody said in the chat, they do need to get David Pastrnak locked up. Like,
definitely.
Let's do this.
Something.
Him and Devers,
that's like
let's get these
Devers
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Two things. I had something in the chat. Yeah, this is a good question again from Court. Who's going to have a better record this year, Vegas with Bruce Cassidy or the Bruins? I'm looking at ESPN's NHL Power Rankings right now. Yeah. The Bruins are at 14 and the Golden Knights are at 15. So similar teams, I guess, as far as like skill set and skill wise and kind of just how they've played over the last several seasons. So you got a prediction there on who has a better record, Vegas or the Bruins?
I'm not that familiar with Vegas's roster.
Okay.
So
I know they obviously have
they have Eichel.
They have Eichel. I don't know. He's the guy that's banged up here and there as well sometimes. I don't know where he is health-wise, but
look, that team, I'll say this. That team underperformed last year.
Yeah.
I think Cassie's going to get him going again. Like they should perform up to the talent.
He lucked into a really good job.
Yeah, no, I mean it'll be comparable. They both should be playoff teams. That's really interesting one because with Cassidy, I think part of the knock was, fair or not, I think part of the knock was that they kept getting capped in the playoffs, right? They just couldn't win that big series in the playoffs. Who gets further in the postseason? I think that's going to be very interesting to see. That would be my question back to you. I'm sorry I don't have a definitive answer, but I thought firing Cassidy was a mistake. I said it at the time.
I did too.
Jim Montgomery might be good, but you lucked into it at that point. Like Bruce Cassidy's a good coach. I think if you have a good coach, you don't, necessarily move on from him. So that's how I felt about that one.
Same. Jim Montgomery's a guy. He won a natty at Denver, I believe, a few years ago. He has some NHL experience. He had some baggage, which is why he ended up not having a head coach job at the time.
Right.
like I said, he has the NHL experience. It's also a thing where this is another team drama type thing. It seemed like with um, all the whole Jake DeBrusk thing with Cassidy, and sort of it seems like players were kind of taking sides on players versus coaches, and that seemed to be it's weird because Cassidy seems like a solid like kick you in the ass locker room guy who people want to
Right.
get behind, but as soon as he gets fired, Bergeron comes back, Krejci comes back, and it's like DeBrusk says he rescinds the trade request, and it's like all guns ablazing again moving forward. So,
Well,
as a guy who liked Cassidy, all that kind of said something different to me.
and I don't disagree.
Yeah,
And we went through that whole thing in this city 3-4 years ago. Well, if it comes down to Brady or Bill, who do you pick? And
right,
Kraft obviously picked Bill, and a lot of people were pissed off about that. It's not quite apples to apples. Bruce Cassidy's not Bill
right,
Belichick, but they chose the players. They chose the
right.
players for better, worse, and I would have liked to see if there was a way to mend that bridge. But yeah. And I saw somebody ask for the college football minute. I think that's going to be Thursday.
Yes, we're gonna get into that Thursday. I was doing a little bit of research on trying to prep a minute that we were gonna put in here.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I decided that this weekend's games were fine, but there's an awesome slate coming up
Hey man.
this coming weekend.
Hey man. Rutgers, Nebraska was everything I wanted it to be. That game
Okay, but
ruled.
again, I guess that's kind of why we designed this college football minute to get into games like Rutgers and Nebraska. But regardless, there's a
We'll do
legit
it.
slate.
We can do it Thursday.
There's a legit slate coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
We'll get into a lot of that on Thursday, and then we'll probably recap that the following Tuesday. So, plenty to talk about on the college football front these coming weeks. But wanted to get in the Boston Sports Bruins
Yeah.
minute here.
We doing picks for tonight?
Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk Monday Night Football too. We have Raiders at Chiefs. Is that where the game is?
Why do we never know where the game is?
I
This is
never
like the
know.
third time this has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at the Chiefs. Yep.
Raiders at Chiefs at Arrowhead. Chiefs are 7-point favorites. The total is 51.5. Mahomes has been the Raiders' daddy the last several years. Josh McDaniels' first matchup against Patrick Mahomes as head coach. I know how I see this game playing out. Alex, I suppose you can go first and you can kind of let me know kind of what you feel about what happened.
Yeah, I want to like the Raiders, man. I do. I kind of was all in on that in the preseason, and they just haven't delivered. They've looked bad. So
Yeah, they have.
this one could be over early. We've
Yeah.
been very lucky this year with pretty much every primetime game. I think has been close. You know, the opener kind of got it was close-ish at halftime, and the Bills sort of ran away with it the second half. I'm trying to think since then. Pretty much every primetime game has been right down to late in the fourth quarter. I think that trend breaks tonight. I think the Chiefs win this one big.
I think so too, and that's where I was kind of going with that at the beginning. Is I do think the Chiefs just end up blowing it open, but I would love to see, and I almost want to see a really competitive game tonight because this Raiders offense, when Derek Carr and Devonta Adams can be lethal. As far with him, why can I not think of Darren Waller's name? Jeez.
Yeah.
They have weapons, and they have a guy in McDaniels who has proven to be a pretty good play caller in the league. So, like, it's a team that has a lot of potential and just hasn't put it together so far. They made a couple signings this offseason. They, brought in Chandler Jones and bolstered up the back end of their defense a little bit too. So it's like it's a team that has a lot there that hasn't really got it going so far. Hopefully tonight's the night because I'd like to see a close game, but ultimately Mahomes is Mahomes. At the end of the day, he's the best quarterback in this league, and he's probably going to take it to the Raiders again tonight. So yeah, that's my thought there. Anything else on Monday Night Football? Do you like the Monday Night Football booth so far? Do you like Buck and Aikman on Mondays?
Yeah, I love Buck and Aikman.
Okay.
It makes me keep thinking it's like every time I hear Buck and Aikman, I think like crap, I gotta go get my homework done. That's like the instinct. Like
Yeah, seriously.
So, there's just a certain setting I'm used to hearing them in, and that's an adjustment. But no, I mean they were good. I liked them at Fox. I like them now.
Too.
So
I'm
generally not a problem that as a person with booths. I think the only booth the Monday Night Football when they were rotating guys sucked.
With like Tessitore and Booger and like
the only booth that I really don't, and it's really only Brad Nessler's great. I can't stand Gary Danielson. I just can't stand him. He's the one guy for whatever reason. He bugs me.
I can't stand Charles Davis on CBS. He bugs the crap out of me.
He's fine. He's not my favorite,
Oh,
but he's fine.
no, he's the one guy I can't.
You know who I
stand.
couldn't stand was Dan Fouts was brutal.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of his either.
He was.
And I wasn't a fan of Sims either. Phil Sims was not very good. I like the Romo edition. It's gotten a little stale. It's gotten a little old, but
Sims, like, some of the stuff he said was annoying, but he had, like, his voice was very easy to listen to. Like, he had a football voice, right?
Yeah,
that's
fair.
part of it. It's not just what they say. It's what do they sound like? Sims, like,
Right.
that voice was like, all right, 4:15. It's Pats Steelers. It's Pats Ravens. It's you know, Patriots versus some good NFC team. Like that, it worked. It clicked.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
We'll get into, or not so much. We'll get into it, but we could put up the college football minute backer for this. Klatt and Gus Johnson are amazing on Fox.
Oh, God,
that is the best booth on television football wise, I think.
I wish they'd let Gus Johnson do NFL games again. I really do.
Me too. That was awesome. I remember there was a play, and now we're just getting nostalgic here, and you guys could just sit and listen to me and Alex's conversation for the next hour if you'd like. But there was this one play. It was a Broncos game. I think Kyle Orton hit Brandon Stokely on like a deep ball, and Gus Johnson just goes out of his mind, and it was awesome to hear on an NFL Sunday.
Love Gus, man.
Love him. But that's that. That's where we're at with our Monday Night Football picks, our loving of some college football announcers. Recapped Patriots versus Lions. Patriots win 29-0, move to 2-3 on the season. They will head to Cleveland this weekend to take on the 2-4 Browns, 2-3 Browns rather.
Yeah, it's week 6, so they're not 2-4.
Yeah. No. Yes.
2-3 sounds right.
So.
Yep.
I gotta have that stuff in front of me next time. But again, heading to Cleveland. Me and Alex will preview that game coming up this Thursday. So check us out here on Patriots Beat. We will we'll preview that Thursday. So we will see you guys then. We'll also be back next week twice to do the same thing here again. So make sure to tune in, read all Alex's stuff at 985thesportsup.com. You can follow him on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. You can read my stuff at CLNSmedia.com. Follow me at Mike Kadlick. So thank you all for tuning in. Until Thursday, we'll see you around.